So when Games Workshop released the new Space Marine book, they want us to go from Devastator to Tactical to Assault Doctrine, as the Space Marines enclose on their foe. But is this ever actually going to happen? Hello and welcome back to another Auspex Tactics video. Today I thought we'd have a bit of a talk about combat doctrines, and how unfortunately they're not all created equal. Now I quite like the combat doctrine rule. It was a really good flat buff to give the Marine Codex, which until this latest release was really struggling with the other stronger armies out there. Giving a wide amount of the Space Marines guns or close combat weapons an extra pip of AP is really something that they could use to inflict a decent amount of damage. I think that it helped represent that Space Marines are elite forces on the tabletop. Along with things like shock assault and certain units gaining more attacks, it really feels like Space Marines are the brutally efficient shooting and close combat force that they really should be, as they are described as in the background. Now Games Workshop's idea is that hopefully you'll bring a fun and balanced Space Marine list which has some heavy weapons, some rapid fire weapons and assault weapons, and some close combat. Now don't get me wrong, a lot of armies will do this and are strong doing this. Then it could actually be a tactically difficult decision whether or not you stay in Devastator Doctrine or move on to Tactical to get better buffs to your bolters, or would you want to stay in Tactical Doctrine or move on to Assault Doctrine to buff your Marines when they charge in. Unfortunately, the way that the rule works means that you get a bigger benefit if as many of your models as possible utilise one doctrine, because you can only have one doctrine active at a time. Say for example your entire army pretty much is armed with bolters or other rapid fire or assault weapons. That means that virtually your entire army is getting a benefit out of it being in the Tactical Doctrine, so your entire army gets a -1 AP, which is very, very nice. Compare this to the player who has taken a third Devastator, a third Tactical and a third Assault weapons. In any given one of the doctrines, they're only going to be getting the AP -1 on 1/3 of their weapons, compared with almost 100% of their weapons for the person who tailored to that doctrine. So that is one major problem from the start. The second problem is that Games Workshop have restricted the order of the doctrines, so you have to start in Devastator, then move to Tactical, then to Assault. This means that if you've tailored your entire army to the Devastator Doctrine, looking at you Iron Hands, then you're going to get that doctrine's buff and any upgraded buff that you have from turn 1 right the way through the rest of the game. Straight off the bat, that is stronger than the Tactical Doctrines by default. If you've built around the Tactical Doctrine, say to utilise the Raven Guard one or the Ultramarines one, with a lot of bolt weapons, your army is going to be a lot less efficient turn 1. So if all of the super doctrines are roughly equal, then the Devastator-centric doctrine is going to be better than the tactical ones. This gets far, far worse when you consider the Assault Doctrine buff that the White Scars get. They have to sit around waiting for turn 3 until their decent melee units can get the buff that they've built towards, and this is really hobbling for the army. In a typical game of Warhammer 40k, turn 1 is a very important turn to maximise your damage output. You'll have your entire army to fight with, or near enough, and any early damage that you can do to the enemy force is an extra unit that won't be contributing for the entire rest of the game. This is why people like to get as big an alpha strike as they possibly can, and this is why a buff to the first turn is amazing from the Devastator Doctrine. Getting your buff on turn 2 is actually really not too bad either though, because turn 2 the armies are generally fully engaged with each other, and a lot more of your units are likely to be in their effective range. I'd say typically turn 2 is the turn that you're likely to see the most damage done by both armies in a game of Warhammer 40k. So while the Tactical Doctrine folks have had to sit around for a turn without their buff, they do get a damage upgrade on a turn that matters. Now by turn 3, a large portion of both forces might have been destroyed. For better or worse, the game might have already been decided in your favour or to your detriment through the units that have been killed or the objectives that have been achieved. It's only then, when the White Scars might have endured 3 turns worth of enemy shooting, that they get their close combat buff. Now don't get me wrong, it's a powerful buff, but there's a very real chance that you might not have very many Space Marines left to take advantage of it. Against some of the really nasty netlist tournament lists out there, a typical Space Marine army might have been tabled by turn 3. White Scars can mitigate it somewhat by putting units in Deep Strike Reserve, such as Terminators, or using their outflank stratagem, but bear in mind that these units coming in on turn 3 won't have been active for the previous turns, so the small force of White Scars that you've left on the tabletop will have spent a good couple of turns being absolutely hammered by a vastly superior foe in terms of numbers and firepower. That's why I haven't seen very many people try and use the White Scars Doctrine yet. I did even play against a very good White Scars player who had chosen to build his list to keep in Devastator Doctrine the entire game, just because he got the extra AP -1 from that, and a lot of the strength of White Scars comes from their stratagems and warlord traits and things. For this reason, I think it would be a sensible game balance decision to allow Space Marine armies to choose which doctrine to start in. Then we might start to see a few more Ultramarines, Raven Guard and White Scars lists crop up, as well as all of the Iron Hands that I've been seeing on the tournament circuit so far. I'm seriously going to pity Blood Angels or Black Templars if they get an Assault Doctrine buff, because if they do, then they'll just have a whole load of snazzy bonuses that are usually just out of their reach until it's too late. In the meantime, that's why I'm definitely in favour of choosing armies that have an either Devastator Doctrine buff or a Tactical Doctrine buff, with all other things being equal, Devastator Doctrine winning out. I'd very much like to hear anyone else's thoughts on the matter, but I think that could make Space Marine lists a lot more interesting if we could choose the starting doctrine. I guess we'll find out exactly what Imperial Fist's doctrine is soon. If it's as rumoured to be a buff to damage against vehicles and buildings when in the Devastator Doctrine, that certainly could see them being played quite a bit as well. Feel free to subscribe if you'd like to see more content about Space Marines in the next few weeks, and thanks for watching Auspex Tactics. I'll see you guys in the next video.